Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers, presented by Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to start your home buying process today. Company NMLS number 1464766. My name is Bill Matz. I'm sitting on the world's least comfortable bar stool right now. Joining me, as always, is Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter, Charlie O'Connor, and Broad Street Hockey's own Kelly Hinkle.
You're
What's
perched
up,
like McAfee. You're perched.
I'm perched. I just
like McAfee.
The stool is so much higher than the table I have my laptop on. The whole thing. Yeah, you spend a couple of months in an actual studio and you forget how we used to have to do things literally every single week with Broad Street Hockey. But here we are now, fam. Matvei Michkov signed. The draft behind us. They've made their selections. Erik Johnson is back. Garnet Hathaway staying. What else? What's left for Danny Briere? That is what we were talking about today, as well as the first day of development camp. And that's where I want to begin with Mr. O'Connor over here, who is down at the Flyers Training Center. Very official name for the skate zone.
Yep.
I won't stop laughing about it because I had no idea they changed it years ago until like the last time I was there. Anyway, Charlie, you were down at development camp today. Give us all the notes. Tell us all of the things that you learned about these young Flyers. I'm sure there are copious amounts of things you would like to share.
Yeah, not really. Day one, just
all the time.
Hey, now day one, just to give people some background. Day one of development camp, at least in terms of what they do on the ice, it's always pretty light. It's not the drills where you can actually watch and learn something about where the players stand from a talent standpoint. It's very much like skating drills where they're going maybe 70%, shooting drills where it's like, okay, yeah, they're just like picking corners and hoping they hit it. Like, it's not a day where there's much you can gain in terms of evaluation. We do interview a lot of people on day one. So we interviewed a lot of players to just run through the list. We interviewed Oliver Bonk, Spencer Gill, Jet Lushenko, Hunter McDonald, Noah Powell, Massimo Rizzo, and Carter Sotheran. So we interviewed quite a few players. And yeah, I mean, it seems like they're all happy to be in development camp. Lushenko is a good skater. Like he comes as advertised in terms of his skating. He can skate real fast. Spencer Gill is very tall and very skinny. He needs to put on a lot of weight. The one guy actually who I would say, if anybody stood out to me, it was Noah Powell, who is the 5th round pick they took out of the USHL. He was a redraft, so he got passed over in the draft last year. Then had a breakout season this year with his USHL team. He looked good. He's not a good skater yet, but the feet are always moving. Like he's high effort. You're hoping that maybe as he gets more power into his strides, maybe that turns into him being at least an okay skater. But he's just one of those guys where you notice him. He's got size, but his shot is heavy. It was getting a quick release off that shot. It was coming in hard. And he just, like, once he gets going, you could just see how he can frighten opposing defenses when he gets rolling. And one cool thing about Noah Powell that I don't think a lot of fans knew, I knew it because I did some research post-draft. He is, like, mostly deaf. Not completely.
Interesting.
But he basically was born with with significant hearing loss, and he wears things in his ears, and he's become an extremely good lip reader. Like when you interview him, and you can see it when you're watching him on the ice, like he is staring intently at the coach, so he can read the coach's lips, or her, because Kara Morey, the Princeton head coach, is at this camp too. But he's reading the coach's lips to basically match it up with what does register from a hearing standpoint. But he's a completely functional, and just it's not holding him back at all, and it's really cool. But yeah, we interviewed him, and he seems like a really nice kid. So it's just one of those cool little things that he's obviously had to overcome in his life, and you got to give him a lot of credit.
And Charlie, when you look at the bright side, he'll never get called off sides on an audible. You know,
He doesn't have to listen to John Tortorella.
That was the big joke. That was the big joke in the media room, was that, if he gets to the NHL quick, that all the other players are going to be jealous of him because he can tune out John Tortorella.
Yeah. What a gift.
So you talked to Massimo Rizzo. That's one of the guys I kind of wanted to talk about because he's kind of this unknown commodity. The Flyers acquired him last year in what is essentially the Tony DeAngelo trade, all that nonsense that went on with the buyout. One of the Kasha brothers writes, but it was the Tony DeAngelo trade. Did we learn anything about him today? How'd he look, etc.?
Not really. As I said, I'll get a better read tomorrow because, his big thing is size. He's just not that big. So it'll be very interesting to see how he holds up in the more battle-oriented drills, which usually start on day 2. That's like day 2, day 3. So that'll be tomorrow. And then Friday is when we'll really get to see that. And I'll try to get a read on, what his strength's looking like. I asked him, though, if he saw himself as a center or a wing at the NHL level, and he basically said he could do both. To me, that tells me that he's probably going to be a wing, because if he really thought he could be a center, he would say, I'm a center. If he's saying I could do both, that hints to me that he's probably a wing, especially given his size and especially given the fact that he's not a blue chip prospect. I just know there are some people who wonder, he's played center before coming up, through college. There's some people who wonder, could he help out down the middle? I think he's a wing. And I think he, without saying as much, he kind of knows that.
Since you mentioned size, Denver Barkey, 102 points last year in the OHL, had a great playoff as well. Last we saw him, it looked like he was about 14 years old and like an underdeveloped 14. Has he hit puberty yet? Like, has he had that growth spurt, put on any weight? Is he still looking like a little kid? Anything on Denver Barkey?
Well, we didn't interview him. So I can't speak.
From what you
I can't speak to what he looks like in terms of his face, because I think that's a real driving part of it, is that when you look at his face and you hear him speak, like he looks like a child. He does. Yeah. On the ice, I didn't notice him looking significantly taller. Maybe he's bulked up a little, but he's never going to be a big guy. Like, that's just not him. There's only so much you can put on that kind of frame and continue to do what you want to do on the ice from a skill standpoint. So he's just always going to be a small guy. The question is whether he has the skill and also the tenacity to make up for his weaknesses from a physical standpoint. But we'll probably talk to him tomorrow, and I'll give you a better read on whether he seems older or if he still looks very, very young.
Hey, Charlie, it's me, Denver Barkey.
Yeah, he's
remember me
speaking real deep.
Yeah.
That would be actually stupendous if he did that. Like, you look at him, he's got lifts in his shoes. Like, he's on like little
3 children in a trench coat.
He's on top. Anyway, so that's Charlie's going to be down at development camp all week, and we will have more news and notes coming out. Just, about all the prospects who are there. Obviously, Alexei Kolosov, there was question whether or not he would be there. He isn't. Was there anything further on that, or is it just like, he's not here at the end?
No, well, what Briere told us yesterday, I didn't transcribe this yesterday because the main focus was Matvei Michkov, but obviously people are still concerned about Kolosov, which I get. Like, when Elliot Friedman puts it in a column, people are going to freak out. From what I understand, the Flyers still expect him to come. When we asked Danny Briere about it yesterday, he said, look, everything we've been told is that he's going to come. The reason why he's not at development camp is because he had a really long season. He's already played in 3 pro years, and that tends to be our cutoff for like our guys anyway, that like once they play 3 pro years, they don't have to do development camp anymore. So we just basically told him, you can have the summer. Like, don't worry about it. That said, I mean, these are just things that, like, you do think about. Like, they brushed off the Cutter Gauthier thing too when he missed development camp, and they were like, oh no, it's no big deal, we're good, when in reality it was, oh no, we're real bad, we just can't tell you. So you do have to, take everything you hear with a little bit of a grain of salt. But my understanding is that they think he's coming. Like, they think Kolosov is coming. And Briere straight up said yesterday, he's like, he's under contract, so he can't really play anywhere else. Then he kind of laughed and said, well, I guess Fedotov stayed, but then he said, look, his team, like Fedotov's team and Fedotov himself, both got punished. So it's hard for me to imagine that, like, this is what Danny said. He says, it's hard for me to imagine that they would do that again, given the fact that, like, those punishments from the IAHF were real. Like, Fedotov can't, like, play in international hockey for a while because of everything that went down. So my guess is that he's going to be there, but, like, obviously you can't completely dismiss something when Elliot Friedman's tweeting it. But everything I've heard is that they think he's good and they think he'll be here at camp in September. I guess we'll see.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to announce that Smooth Sack Summer is officially upon us. And when you're playing in the summer sun, make sure you're groomed from pubes to bum. Thanks to our friends at Manscaped, you can make this season your smoothest yet. The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra is the ultimate bundle to keep your boys downstairs cool while looking hot. Join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. You can get 20% off and free shipping when you go to manscaped.com and use code FLYERS. Summertime and the trimming's easy. Look, listen, we all want to look our best. Even say we're headed to no shower happy hour, there's no reason not to be trimmed and smelling great. And Manscaped's Performance Package 5.0 Ultra has everything you need to ensure your summer of love isn't a disaster. Inside the package, you'll find the star of the show, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. The 5th generation trimmer features 2 interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads, a standard one for just taking a little off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. We also have dual LED spotlights to provide contrast on multiple skin tones, 3 length setting combs, and did I mention this trimmer is waterproof too? Beach, lake, or shower, this razor will devour even the strongest pubes. Oh my God.
Don't shave your pubes in the ocean, fam.
Don't do that in a lake. Come on. Anyway, now that you have the perfect haircut, use Manscaped's liquid formulations to keep that freshness even at the hottest summer barbecues. The Crop Soother Aftershave Lotion and Crop Preserver Anti-Chafe Ball Deodorant. Once they touch your sack, you'll never go back. Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts to their Performance Package 5.0, the Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag. Get 20% off and free shipping with code FLYERS at manscaped.com right now. That's 20% off and free shipping with code FLYERS at manscaped.com. It's Smooth Sack Summer, boys. Get on board or get left behind.
Wow. Kelly, I did love you mouthing package.
Smooth Sack Package. I really respect the way that Manscaped leans in. It's a very good
They do.
You know what?
Yeah, they get it.
Why beat around the bush, you know?
Hey-o.
Anyway,
folks.
So that's development camp. Is there anything else from first day of development camp? Or are we good to just kind of get on to the rest of the stuff, and we'll have more news and notes the rest of the week?
Not really. I mean, as I said, it'll be more interesting to see tomorrow and Friday when you actually see them battling, and then there's the 3-on-3 tournament on Saturday. I will say that both Hunter McDonald and Oliver Bonk, like they are built. You can tell that they have been working out quite a lot over this last year, and they look significantly more built than they did last year. So, hey, good for them.
Hell yeah. That's what I like to see. Put on that muscle, boys. And then make sure you're well groomed. Go to manscaped.com. Use code FLYERS.
It was nice that the homies were there watching the kids.
That
was cool. So it was York, Drysdale, Farabee, and someone else? Or was it just those three?
I think Fedotov was there.
There was 4 of them.
And cannot confirm, but it's possible that Morgan Frost was there too.
Okay.
I like that Fedotov's part of that crew. I've decided he's right in there with them.
I hope so.
Well, so Farabee is buddies with Zamula. So wouldn't shock me that Fedotov is kind of latched on because he's now friends with Zamula because of their countrymen. I could see that.
All right, great. I want the locker room to be tight. These are things I love to hear. Now we can move on to, I guess, the business of the day. So Michkov's ELC is done, and we can get into that and the performance bonuses and everything. It's kind of what I laid out last week, the Class A and B bonuses that ELC eligible players have kind of built in. You can achieve up to 4 of those bonuses in the Class B if you do one of them. But those are like, yeah, you have a fucking star player in your hands if you achieve a Class B. It's up to what, $3.5 million in bonuses, I think.
Yeah, I believe it would max out. It could theoretically max out at like 445 or something. I think in terms of like cap hit plus bonuses. I think that's the way it adds up. And I asked Briere about that yesterday, if he's got the bonuses like maxed out, and he's basically like almost. So I don't have the specific details of the contract yet, but it certainly seems like they maxed him out as much as they possibly could.
Makes sense.
We expected this, and it's just sort of a thing. It's maybe while they're going to want to open up a little more cap space or keep some free so it doesn't roll over to next year. But we all saw this coming. It's, yeah, sure. It's a 975 cap hit now, and then
950, I believe. I think 950 is the max. Yeah.
And then, next year it's like, oh, it was actually 3. Okay, we'll see how we figure this out. But who cares? It's the team's best player. He's here. That's great. Hathaway, that extension. Yeah, that extension got done. We have resolution in terms of no qualifying offer for Carter Hart, something we wanted to know about. Cam Atkinson bought out. Another thing we figured was going to happen. Doesn't look like, it's not going to. Cal Peterson won't be. The Ryan Johansson thing, we just don't know how that's going to play out because we don't know if he's ever going to be deemed healthy. Draft is over, as I said. They took care of some business yesterday. EJ is back. Little surprising, Konecny not done yet. I realize it's one day. Like we're like 36 hours into this thing with Travis Konecny, but him being eligible to sign. But it did seem like back in the winter they were like, yeah, we're gonna get this thing pre-negotiated, and then on July 1st or shortly after, and we are still well within the shortly after range, obviously, it will be announced. Not announced yet, though. Is this a little surprising to anybody?
So I have to say that it's, based on the contracts that we've seen signed over the last 36 hours, there's no fucking way he's getting 9. Like, I think that we can, like, if Reinhart got 8.5, Konechny's not getting more than Sam Reinhart. Like, no fucking way. So I think maybe like things have kind of fallen in the Flyers' favor a little bit, because if Konechny was looking for 8.8 or whatever, like Danny Briere has to point at that one single contract and be like, no, dude, no, not a chance.
I don't think it's that simple, but Kelly, I do agree with you though that the last couple days, the contracts that have been signed definitely do help the Flyers' position. Because the 3 contracts I'm thinking about are the Reinhart deal, absolutely. The Jake Gensel deal, actually. Because even though that is at a $9 million cap hit, that's a $9 million cap hit over 7 years. Now, it would be hard, I think, for Konechny to argue that he has a better track record than Gensel. And if you're the Flyers, you could theoretically say, like, okay, well, if you want to say you're Gensel, then let's just we're starting with a $9 million cap hit. We can tack on the extra year to bring that cap hit down, give you a little bit more money, and then boom, suddenly you're at a reasonable cap hit for what we're looking for. And then today you have the Pavel Buchnevich contract, which is 6 years, $8 million. It just seems like if Konechny came into this negotiation, if his camp came into this negotiation looking for like well into the 9s, coming up on the 10s, these contracts do not help his case from a comparable standpoint. But Bill, to go back to answer your question, it doesn't surprise me. What I had heard was that the Flyers want to have this done ideally by the end of the summer. Like, they don't want this to bleed into the season. But no, it seemed like over the last month or so that both sides came to the conclusion that like the gap was larger than I think both of them had hoped it would be. But if that's coming from Konecny asking for close to $10 million a year, you can understand why the Flyers are like, yeah, we're not going to sign that. Now, if Konecny was hoping that, Reinhart was going to hit the market, he wasn't going to re-sign with Florida, and then he was going to go take 10 mil somewhere, well, that just got dashed because he stayed in Florida. He signed his deal. Like, the thing with the Reinhart stuff is that while I'm sure that he gave them a little bit of a hometown discount, like, number one, these guys don't like to move. We talked about this. Number two, it's a cup team. They've been to this cup final 2 straight years. They won it this past year. He probably wants to stay. That's something that obviously, and then it's taxes. I'm sure it plays a bit of a role, but but in any case, I don't think Konecny can, like, the Flyers can't just be like, well, Reinhardt's way better than you, and he took 8.6 or whatever, so you should take 7.8. Like, there are going to be factors that play into this where Konecny's going to be like, well, like, come on, you got to understand that that's not an apples to apples situation, but it certainly does help the Flyers leverage, because if I'm the Flyers, I'm absolutely pointing to Reinhart and I'm saying this guy scored 50 plus goals last year and he got 8.6 over 8 years. So who are you to ask for 8.9? That's insane. And that's fair.
Absolutely. And the counter to that, obviously, I remember this coming out like during different among a few different Toronto, some of their stars negotiations. And it's like, yeah, comparables don't really work. It's what everyone's situation is. Like, I would take less if we were keeping a cup team together. I would take less if it was Tampa and we're trying to get the band back together, reassemble a cup team, and we have other stars who need accommodating. But guess what? I'm the best player here, bitch. Like, you ain't got no one else to pay. I'm Travis Konecny. This is the only, like, Erik Johnson, Garnet Hathaway. These are your big offseason moves thus far. I'm worth more than, like, maybe Reinhart is in that situation just because of what he means to keep this thing together. That would be the counter. Obviously, yeah. I have thought time and time again, if this is the money Travis Konecny wants, like, trade him right fucking now. Like, but we'll see how this thing plays out. But I brought up, like, so many things got done over the last couple of days from between the draft up through yesterday. Do you think there could be any outside factors, like something else they're hoping to get done before they're like, okay, and now we can think about this, $8, $9, $10 million, whatever it's going to be, a year contract for Travis Konecny? Like, is there some other shoe maybe that's going to drop? Do you think that's a possibility first?
I mean, I think there could be other shoes that drop, but I don't think it has a ton of bearing on the Konecny negotiation. Like, a GM is capable of doing more than one thing at the same time. Like, he can be negotiating a Travis Konecny contract with a few calls a day, or even just like a text message a day or whatever, wherever they are in the negotiation, while also trying to work out trades. Trading whoever on the roster, a hockey trade, trading, trying to dump Rasmus Ristolainen. Like, but I don't think those things necessarily preclude him from also working out a deal with Konecny, because the Konecny deal won't kick in until 2025, 2026 anyway. Yeah. So it's not like they need to clear up cap space now to sign Konecny. Konecny's on his current contract for one more year. So anything they do in terms of trades or whatever, or other signings or anything like that, I don't think it's going to have that much bearing on what they do with Konecny. It just may take some time to work out this deal with Konecny, because the two sides are still far enough apart that they're not ready to sign a deal, and we're still ways away from camp, so the urgency hasn't set in yet. But if you're asking if I think there's another shoe to drop on this offseason, Briere more or less said yesterday that he's trying, that he's trying to work out trades, that he didn't say he's definitely going to do a trade, but it's abundantly clear that he ain't done, or at least he doesn't want, he's not at pencils down moment yet. He's still working. And the one thing that did, I'm working on an article about this, about the Flyers cap situation. The one thing that did catch my attention was I asked Danny if they've accepted that they're going to be tapping into long-term injured reserve this year. Now that Atkinson has been bought out, they know Michkov's here, he signed to the ELC. Like, have you accepted that LTIR is going to be a thing? Because if you look at their cap situation right now, the two guys left that they have to sign are Bobby Brink and Yegor Zamula. Those are your two. if you don't try to lowball them like crazy, you're going to go over the cap ceiling, like counting the Ryan Johansson and the Ryan Ellis contracts in full. Like you're going to go over unless you just basically, try to basically screw those two guys over so you can stay under the cap, which maybe they'll try to do. Maybe that's an option. But most likely, once they sign those two guys, they're going to be over the cap. So you've got two options here. Your option number one is use LTIR. That's the easy one because you got two guys in Ellis and Johansson who can't play, or Ellis can't play. Johansson maybe won't play. We don't really know which. But in any case, they both probably can be put on LTIR. So in terms of functional cap space, you're still fine. You can open up the allowance if you need to. But if you don't want to use LTIR, and Briere again reiterated yesterday, he does not want to do it, then it becomes, okay, how do you get yourself into a position where you don't have to use it? He basically said Zamula and Fedotov are going to be Michkov's buddies next year. So they ain't dumping Zamula. Like he's here. I cannot imagine they dump Brink because he's a talented young player. And that was part of the reason why they bought out Cam Atkinson, was to give Bobby Brink a regular shot. So that means that if you don't want to tap an LTIR, that means that you're trying to work on something to move out some space. And that's where I wonder about Risto. I don't know if they can do it. I am not exactly optimistic that anyone will be willing to trade for Ristolainen after the injury plagued year he had. That said, and this is fair point, it does seem like around the league, big defensemen are back in vogue. That teams want the big boys again. That's the thing. And maybe, just maybe, they can find a team that didn't get the big defenseman they wanted on July 1 and didn't trade for the guy they wanted on July 2. And maybe, just maybe, you can find someone who wants themselves a lightly used Rasmus Ristolainen. Because if you can get rid of them, even if it involves you taking like another contract back, like say you take back like somebody on a 2-year, $2 million a year deal, that would allow you to re-sign Brink, and it would allow you to re-sign Zamula and not have to use LTIR. So if that's the plan, if they really don't want to use LTIR, I do wonder just how much he's shopping Risto.
No, that's when I saw the Tyler Myers deal, obviously Zadorov, all those guys from the trades this summer or this past trade deadline and everything. And also Zeev Buium, when he fell to basically 13th in the draft, I was like, I wonder how much, like, if everyone seems to collectively be going, yo, we need big defensemen. Well, we got one. We got one who kind of doesn't factor in.
So big.
It was just something I was thinking about, and I'm glad you brought that up. Before we move on to Danny's off-season things that we need to accomplish next, I gotta tell you that today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and I think we've all learned over the past few years that just having someone to talk to now and then, it can be very, very helpful. Life goes really, really fast, and whether it's needing to take a moment to celebrate your wins, make adjustments in your life, therapy can help you take stock of your progress, set achievable goals for the next few months, and maybe even learn some coping skills, how to set boundaries, empower the best version of yourself. Whatever it is that you're looking to accomplish in your personal life, BetterHelp is there for you. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, and it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Maybe you get matched with someone who right away you think you jibe with, and then maybe not so much. Maybe there's a conflict of schedule, whatever it might be. No additional charge. You can change whenever you want. So take a moment, visit betterhelp.com/PHLY to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/PHLY. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and I think you might want to give it a try. If you're just looking to learn some coping skills, whatever it might be. Set some boundaries in your personal life. I know that was huge for my wife and I. We went through an issue with our family a few years ago where it was just like, man, there just has to be some sort of adjustment made here between us and, as I knock over my microphone, that's great. Not used to doing the remote shows, but yeah, betterhelp.com/PHLY. All right.
So wait,
now we
real
talk-
quick.
Oh,
Sorry,
go ahead.
before we move on, someone asked in the chat for Charlie to explain the disadvantage of using LTIR, and I think that might be helpful for people that aren't super familiar with.
I think so too, because even now and then I get confused about why they just refuse to do it. So, Charlie, take it away.
Well, basically, the main disadvantage of using LTIR is that you're technically over the cap. It's not cap space. It is what is essentially called cap allowance. So you are not banking any cap space, which you do. So you bank. Really, we think of the salary cap as like it's $88 million. You can't spend more than $88 million in terms of the guys under contract. Really, the way it works is that you have a daily cap spend. So I haven't done the math of this year, but like just for ease of whatever, let's just say that every day you are allowed to spend a combined total of $100,000 on player salaries every day of the league year. And let's say in day one, you spend $96,000. That means that that's $4,000 that in theory you could use later on in the year. And all the cap space you bank at the end of the year, that is essentially, what you didn't spend off of the $88 million yearly cap. Now, why is that important? It's important for this reason, because if you have players that have bonuses and because when, like, for example, with Matvei Michkov, his cap hold during the season is going to be $950,000. That is his cap hit. That's how you stay under the cap. But with the bonuses, by the end of the year, the Flyers are very likely going to have to pay out like at least $1.5 million more to him in bonuses and have that fit under the cap too. Now, if every day they banked $6,000 a day, by the end of the year, they will have enough once we find out what bonuses Michkov gets to pay off those bonuses and stay cap compliant for that season. If they don't, which they won't if they are on LTIR, because LTIR, as I said, again, it's an allowance. It's not like it's actual cap space. You're just allowed to go over the cap. So you don't bank shit when you're using it. If at the end of the year, the Flyers have $0 worth of bank cap space, and it turns out Matvei Michkov has $1.6 million worth of bonus money coming, well, guess what? That $1.6 million worth of bonus money goes onto your cap for the next year. And the more you kick that can down the road, the more likely the Flyers are going to have a lot of these bonus overages when they're actually trying to turn the corner and compete and want to spend money. So it's better off. And there are other reasons. There are other benefits. It helps your flexibility at the trade deadline in terms of bank cap space. It helps them potentially, retain salary on deals, things like that. But the big one for me is the bonuses, because they don't want to get stuck into a death spiral where, by the time we're 2 years down the road and the Flyers want to start delving into the free agent pool and start aggressively trying to improve, they have to account for the fact that they have $3.6 million worth of bonus overages on their cap before they can even start that, because they didn't manage it well these last two seasons. That's why it's important.
I think I saw today or yesterday, I can't remember, they asked about the potential of maybe one day trading that Ryan Ellis contract, the way they did with Chris Pronger and stuff like that. There are some teams.
Rip Arizona Coyotes.
It could happen, but it's a lot harder now. The Arizona Coyotes aren't a Ponzi scheme anymore.
That's what Utah is one of the teams, and San Jose, we saw like they got a good player in Barclay Goodrow, but they're trying to get to the cap floor is one of the main reasons. They're like, yeah, man, put that dude on waivers. Doesn't matter if he doesn't want to be traded here. We just need to pay him because, we need to get to the cap floor. I wonder if they're going to be interested in doing something like that. If that's the case, would you, Charlie O'Connor, be willing to part with some sort of asset, a late round, second day pick, to have them do it? Or would you just be like, screw it, just have the bonus overages?
It's a good question. It's an interesting question. I don't think I would be willing to part with a pick in the top 3 rounds. I would probably be willing to do it for like a 4th or a 5th. but I don't know if a team would be willing to do it for just that price. Like, they're going to want more. Like, we just saw what was a ridiculous trade, but it happened. We just saw Detroit pay a second-round pick to get rid of Jake Wollman, who is a pretty solid defenseman on a not crazy contract.
He's okay.
So
Felt
that's
very
like the
familiar.
going rate. Yeah.
Felt
I mean,
very
and Ottawa just traded a third-round pick to get rid of Matthew Joseph, who, again, not a bad player and not on a terrible contract. So if you're trying to get rid of, 6.25 for 3 more years on Ryan Ellis?
Yeah.
That probably going to cost a lot.
Cost you. Mm-hmm.
No, it's a pretty, it's not huge, but it's a fucking sizable contract. Like, and it's several more seasons. It's not like it's just 1 or 2 years. It's 3, is it? So, like, yeah,
it's 3. Yeah.
I was just curious what your thoughts on that situation were, because I saw it come up yesterday. As we talk about trades, and we had the conversation a bit yesterday about the, the perception that Danny hasn't been able to close some deals. These rumors sometimes I'm like, all right, did you want him to though? Like, he can't close the deals except for the ones he has closed. Like, I went to FlyersHistory.com. They've made some trades. They made several just on Friday and Saturday. Yeah, I know we don't think of moving around in the draft as like a trade or whatever, but I want to know, does Briere, do you think, I loved Danny Briere's first year in the job. I thought he did a lot of things he really had to do. Obviously, that major thing is drafting Matvei Michkov. That gives you a lot of leeway. And then when you see Oliver Bonk have that kind of draft +1 season, you're like, oh, fucking A. All right, 2 good first-round picks. Way to go. But just the moves to get essentially the 2 firsts plus for Ivan Provorov after you move Sean Walker, all that stuff. Move on from Kevin Hayes, do all the things that he was able to do, the D'Angelo buyout, etc. Does now in year 2, for this to be a successful offseason, do you think Danny has to make at least one kind of big move that improves the team, if not in the here and now, for the future? Because that is his job, to make the team better. And can't say he's done that yet this offseason. He's made some trades to, get to next year's draft where they think it's a better draft, but that's essentially like, I traded my lottery ticket for what I think is a better lottery ticket,
Well, so my answer to you on that, Bill, is basically like, look, if we are talking purely about the moves that he has definitely made, I do not think this has been anything special of an offseason. He hasn't done anything really. What has he done? He had a draft that I'm not super pumped about, even if I like Lushenko as a prospect. I'm not giving it an A like I did last year, where I was like, holy shit, that's a hell of a draft. It's like sure, whatever. I hope you're right kind of draft. We re-signed Garnet Hathaway, re-signed Erik Johnson. He hasn't made any huge moves. No, none of this is huge. The one big caveat, though, and this just comes down to how much credit you want to give him for this. He brought Matvei Michkov over. And, if you want to argue that was not him, that was his camp, and that was, the Scott St. Petersburg willing to let him go, and the Flyers were just the beneficiaries of the situation, that's fair. But if you suspect that Danny had, and I'm making a little joke here, had a little bit of his fingerprints on that, then potentially you might want to give him a stronger grade, because there's no player that's more important to the Flyers' future than Matvei Michkov. And Danny got him over 2 years early. So that's my answer to you.
I agree with that line of thinking. I want to get your answer to this question as well, Kelly. It's just this. I can't credit him for this year for that, because he made a ballsy draft pick. Whether you feel like he fell to 7, that's luck, but he had to pull the trigger, and he had to be confident that like we were eventually going to get this guy. And then things, I guess we can say he had his hands in it. Whether he did or didn't, we'll never know probably. It just kind of all goes back to, this is just more of last year's move paying off. Like, this is him having, him having the guts to do what he did last year and be like, no, he's the best player in this fucking draft outside of, obviously Bedard. Maybe this is the best player in this draft. He's at 7. This is the easiest draft pick I'm ever going to make. And then it all kind of works out. Or even if you think he negotiated this thing, if he, through back channels or whatever, made it happen, I kind of do just chalk it up to next year because he was coming at some point. Like, you were getting Michkov, hopefully, eventually. It's early, and that's
but
great.
We didn't know that for sure.
And if you don't, it's a terrible failure of leadership then.
Yeah.
Like, I guess if we're going to say that, then we do have to give him credit for bringing him over. But you would hope when you take a guy, it's with the understanding that he's going to play for the team at some point. It's the 7th overall goddamn draft pick. And at that
point,
actually, that's the other part of it, is that at that time when they made that pick, they knew that Cutter Gauthier wanted out. Maybe they weren't concrete on it. They thought, oh, he's going to change his mind. He's a dumb kid. But he had already asked out by that point when they made that pick last year. So you had to hit this. Like, he was coming. But either way, I'm kind of chalking it up to last year's success, just kind of carrying over to now something happening this season. And maybe it's 2 seasons early, whatever. But and again, it's July 2nd. The league year started yesterday. So I'm not like killing him, or I'm just saying, Kelly, for this to be a success, does something more have to happen than what has happened already?
Not necessarily, because again, like, we are all operating under the assumption that Danny Briere and Keith Jones have a long-term goal for the Flyers. If they don't do anything this season and they win a cup 3 seasons from now, then was this offseason a success? Yes, obviously. Whatever they did this offseason, it got them to a cup 3 years from now. Like, there's none of this can really be judged, I don't think, on a micro level. But also, I think what's happening here is that fans are seeing people tweet out rumors, parts of rumors, speculation, all kinds of stuff. And then they assume, like, oh, this is a thing that's going to happen. Like, oh, Shane Pinto's on the block and he's going to get traded to the Flyers. And if he doesn't, it's because Danny Briere fucked it up. Yeah. And like, that's not how it works. And so people are getting this idea in their head that like all of these potential apples are hanging out here and all Danny has to do is grab them. And if he's not grabbing them, it's because he's too short and he can't do it. Like, that's not how it works. And
That's good. That's good stuff.
I just think that like, people need to just like, first of all, consider the source for everything that you read on the internet. Elliot Friedman says something. Yeah, it's probably true. Charlie O'Connor says something. Yeah, it's probably true. Bob Johnson, 69-420, who went to Flyers practice one time and he's saying something. Maybe you don't listen to him. I'm like, just like,
can we not disparage Bobby Joe? All right.
I know. I love him. He's great. I just think that everyone has to stop anticipating things that they don't know are even going to happen and just let things play out. Like, if he does something that's bad, then we can judge him on it. If we find out at some point from a guy like Elliot Friedman, like, oh yeah, Shane Pinto was going to go to Philly, but they wanted Scott Lawton and Danny Briere said no. Like, oh, well, that's a problem. Then we could talk about that. But right now, all of this is just speculation. And it seems silly to me to damn him for things that we don't even know are true. Doesn't make any sense to me.
I do, Kelly, I do agree that, and this is just the perils of being extremely online.
Yes.
You know, the positive of being extremely online as a sports fan is that you get all of the information. You have more info. You know more things than the people who aren't. You just do. You get it right at your fingertips. Your finger is on the pulse of everything that's going on with your favorite team. The negative of it is that you know everything, in that you're literally getting information overload to the point where it becomes very difficult to distinguish between what is true and what is false, because you're just getting all of the things pumped into you constantly. And it does have the potential to convince someone who is extremely online and is paying attention to every rumor and every report and everything that because you know everything that was rumored. If nothing happens, you're more disappointed than someone who isn't up to date on every single rumor. They just, like, for someone who is not that online, if the Flyers do nothing the rest of the offseason, okay, they're just like, okay, we don't make any more big trades, whatever, and the end of August rolls around, what is the casual Flyers fan going to think? I think most of those casual Flyers fans are going to be like, you know what? Flyers are almost a playoff team last year, and they just added Matvei Michkov. I think they had an okay offseason. Whereas if you are very online, following every single rumor and every single report and every single rumbling, you're going to be much more frustrated because you feel like something should have happened because you build it up in your head so many times that something was going to happen. So I think that's a completely reasonable point, but that's not even me shitting on people that are very online. I think it just naturally happens when you do it. It's the one negative of it.
And I said a lot of that yesterday. Like, we'll just never know. Like, all right, Shane Pinto, let's use him as the example. If it comes out like, all right, for Lawton and the Columbus pick, they could have got it done. All right, that's a starting point. That's new. Okay. We can talk about that. And if Danny wasn't able to figure something out there, all right. But what if they're like, it's Farabee and 12 and we're not moving? All right. Well, then no.
I don't like you that much, Shane.
Then he didn't get something done that would have been objectively bad.
Right.
Like, there's also that. I will say, though, like, at a certain point, and this may be counter to what I said yesterday, because I think they kind of may have telegraphed for us by kicking the can to next year's draft. This is going to take a little longer than we think. And guys like Garnet Hathaway and Scott Lawton that are still here. We want them here because this rebuild, it's going to be about the length of their contracts, you know? They might be telegraphing that for us, but at a certain point, and this is just us being impatient, we want to see the players who are going to be here. We got one. Yeah, we got one. It's Michkov. That's awesome. We think some of these guys, they gave Owen Tippett the long-term contract last year. We assume he's one. Cam York, we all really, I think, started to enjoy by the end of this season, last season. I know I was on York, and by the end, I was like, I like him a lot. You know, like, we're starting to see it. Goaltending, at least we have a big roster of goalies. One of these guys hopefully works out. We'll see. It's all voodoo. But, like, I guess I just want the tangible, like, all right, fucking Trevor Zegras, it's him. You know, like, what? And that's just the example. But I just want to know who we're backing on being the dudes who are going to lead us into this next great Flyers era. And many of them aren't here yet, and it might just be a little longer than we were hoping, I guess. And I can't call this offseason a success because what to define it. But we won't know. Like Kelly said, we won't know for years down the line. But as of like this moment, it's hard not to say, especially with the impending arrival of Matvei Michkov, that the future is bright. And this Future is Bright segment is brought to you by our friends at Shady Rays. Let's put on our rose-colored glasses and explain to the people why the future is bright for the Philadelphia Flyers. This is brought to you by Shady Rays. Head to shadyrays.com and use code PHLY at checkout for 35% off polarized sunglasses. I told you, I just came off the beach. I was wearing my Shady Rays right down here in Sea Isle today. Everybody's a big fan of them. I didn't lose them in the ocean. Very happy about that. Forgot to take them off one of the times I went in. But, you know, you can always use that lost or stolen protection. If you do take them in the ocean, maybe you'll lose them in a wave or something. But the future does seem bright, and I do think you guys just did a pretty decent job of explaining, even if things don't happen at the pace we want them to. I know I'm impatient. I want this team to be good yesterday. But the future, I do believe, remains bright. And that segment was brought to you by our friends at Shady Rays. Use that PHLY, get 35% off. What else do we have to talk about today? Just thinking about some things we've kind of talked about in the in terms of the conference and the division that the Flyers are in. There's a really good chance a lot of teams are better. I truly believe, like,
Yes.
obviously, like the Devils, we just expect to be better because injuries and goaltending, they can't get that kind of luck again. They improved the goaltending.
And I think they've had a good offseason.
Yes.
They've had a legitimately good offseason.
They've added a few defensemen. They lost some like true defensive help before last season, and I think they kind of maybe fixed that this offseason. Obviously, they add Markstrom. That's good. You got to believe, like Dougie Hamilton, Jack Hughes, these guys are going to be not missing half the season, you should at least assume. But you look at Ottawa, it's like, yeah, they have a good young roster that should be coming into its own. Plus, they just added a former Vezina winner, like a dude who's real good in Linus Ullmark. Like, eventually, Buffalo just needs to take another step. You got to believe it's going to happen eventually. Even the Capitals, who did beat out the Flyers in the last day of the season, maybe they don't get the crazy goaltending run at the end of the year like they got, but they also shouldn't suck for the first half of the season the way they did last year. They should be at least a little better. This conference and division, after being not so great last year, we were like, okay, who's a contender? Florida, I guess we'll throw the Rangers in there, and they turned out to be better than we expected. And then Carolina's always kind of in that perennial contender, even though they never do it in the postseason. They seem to always be like a 100-point team. I think they got better. They added a tremendous, offensive defenseman.
Two of them.
In Shane Gostisbehere, without having to trade for him. I guess give him up for nothing. They actually just went and signed him.
Give up a pick for him.
Yeah, tremendous. But anyway, this conference, I think it got a lot better in the last couple of days. Agree?
Yes. The Flyers are telling us they're not making the playoffs. Like Danny's already said it like 3 times.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's the other thing where I'm like, why is everyone so convinced like they're not rebuilding properly? Like they've said over and over again, like, yeah, we're not trying to make the playoffs, fam. And like no one believes them for some reason. I don't understand really. But yeah, the Flyers they're better because they have Michkov, but they're worse in a few ways as well. And the goaltending is a giant question mark. Who the F knows what's going to happen there. And just about every team around us got demonstrably better yesterday. So, yeah, it's not going to be surprising to anybody, I think, if the Flyers are making a lottery pick again next year.
I think they will absolutely remain competitive. I am not expecting, I'm not going into the season thinking, oh man,
they're not going to be the Blackhawks.
No. Yeah, they're not going to be terrible. No, they got worse defensively because you won't have Sean Walker for the first 2/3 of the year. That's real. So they got worse defensively. They got a little bit better offensively, and the goaltending is an unknown. They obviously had one half of the season of Carter Hart. That's going to be replaced presumably by Ivan Fedotov, and hopefully Sam Ersson is a bit better in terms of full season numbers when he's not getting run into the ground over the final 2.5 months of the season. But we don't know. Maybe those two guys just stink. It's an unknown. If I had to guess, I think the Flyers are probably around the same true talent, if a little bit worse than they were last year. I do agree, though, that they will have more competition. I think the other teams will probably be better. But by the same token, there's always teams that underachieve. We might look at it and say, the Devils are going to get better. And honestly, I think they will. I would be shocked if the Devils don't make the playoffs next year. But I would have been shocked if you told me this time last year that the Devils weren't going to make the playoffs. Would it blow anybody away if the Rangers just stink inexplicably for a year? Or Toronto falls off the cliff and it ends up being, are they going to trade Marner at the deadline? These weird things happen every year. So maybe the Flyers, they're giving it back to the Devils because the Devils got better and they were probably underachieving last year anyway. And the Caps improves, so maybe they stay ahead of the Flyers. But maybe one of those teams that we think are locks to make the playoffs steps back. And then the Flyers are right back in that bubble. That's more or less where I'm expecting them to be. I'm expecting them to be in that playoff bubble and end up, with a pick somewhere in the 10 to 14 range. That's my expectation.
That's probably the most realistic. I'm just looking at this more I expect them to be competitive on a game-to-game basis. But it wouldn't shock me if they lose like every 1-goal game, like that, because those are a lot of coin flips there and shit like that, and if they're picking 8th because they just drop a little bit and a couple of teams are just a little bit better, like that wouldn't, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility either.
It's
like
not.
The Flyers could be the team that underachieves. You take away that November to January goaltending they got, it's a totally different season.
Yeah.
And we're taking away 65% of those starts at least without Carter Hart. Now, Sam Ersson might be the goalie we saw in that time if he's getting normal rest in between starts and it's not 18 to 21 or whatever it was. Fedotov might be good. At least serviceable. We have no idea. He also might be terrible. No way to know that. I just think it's really possible they are an entertaining team, and ultimately we look at the end of the year and go, yeah, they're in the bottom 10. Like, I think that's well within the range of outcomes.
I mean, the only reason that they were so close to the playoffs last year is because so many teams kept shitting the bed. Like, all other teams had to do was play to their average, and the Flyers would have been out of the playoffs long before the end of the season. They just got lucky a bunch last year, and then they ended up shitting the bed, right at the very end. But the Flyers were helped quite a lot by other teams in the Metro just forgetting how to play hockey, and that happening 2 seasons in a row seems unlikely to me.
Yeah, I think one of the underlying, like, it's a big story. We've talked about it a lot. We will continue to talk about it a lot over the next 2 months, 3 months, really leading into the year, because it is one of the biggest stories surrounding the Flyers. But if anything, I think we're underrating just how important it was for the Flyers from October through January that for those 4 months, they got Sean Couturier, that they got top 6 center, 2-way dominant Sean Couturier. Because were there other reasons why they fell off in February, March, and April? Yes, there absolutely were other reasons. They traded away Sean Walker. The defense got injury ravaged. The goaltending fell apart. But I do think a not insignificant part of it was in the first 3.5 months of the year, they had good Sean Couturier. In the final 2.5 months of the year, they didn't. And then they started playing like crap because having that stud top line center, and he's not a superstar, but when he's driving play the way he was and playing, both ends of the ice the way he is and making his line mates better, that's huge. And they lost that from the end of January through the end of the year. And there's no guarantee that the guy from the first half of the year is coming back. They hope he is. I certainly am not ruling out the possibility. But if the new normal for Couturier is what he was from February on, this team could drop off significantly. If he comes back and is mostly what he was in the first half, this team, I think, is going to very much stay in the race.
No, listen, you named all those things. The goaltending fell off after January. The defense, the injuries, trading Sean Walker, all that stuff. It all kind of happened at the same time. But you look at Sean Couturier's fall off the cliff, and it very much aligns with the team itself. We talk about this team and how they have no centers, and it's like, well, he's the one. And if they have none, they're fucked. And that's kind of what we saw happen. And I do not mean to disparage the good goddamn name of Morgan Frost. He's a fine player. I like Morgan Frost. Hope he takes another step. If he gets to play with, say, Forster and Michkov and those guys, lead this team to the playoffs because it's the perfect combination of skill and size and shooting and playmaking, etc. Awesome. A lot hinges on Sean Couturier, and that is there's just no way to know. There's just absolutely no way to know until we see it happen. And even when we see it happen, it's like, all right, what's he going to be in February again? Because we were rejoicing in the streets last year, like, okay, Sean can play. Awesome. Ah, shit. The coach just scratched the captain. These things happened all within one season. So there's really no way to know. Before we get to the super chats, I want to tell you about our friends at Coors Light. And listen, between work, social media, and the choices life throws our way, it's no wonder we're more worked up than ever. And Coors Light celebrates rising above and choosing a chill mindset. Why not turn a rained out barbecue into a karaoke house party. Or after a tough loss, settle scores with an ice-cold peace offering. Make the choice to choose chill, then reach for a Coors Light. It's mountain cold refreshment. And listen, this team, they give us lots of reason to be fired up. We've been doing this a long time, and I know I'm not getting any more sane, and that's why sometimes I need to choose to chill, and there's no better way to chill than with an ice-cold Coors Light. So whether you're freaking out about, the centers, the GM, the draft, you need to find the Blue Mountains in your fridge and enjoy a beer as cold as the Rockies, because when everything surrounding your hockey team is on fire, sometimes you just got to choose the chill. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY hockey. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. All right, and yesterday we came up with this idea. We love the super chats. We love the participation from our live audience. It's awesome, but a lot of times we jump into the super chats. They can slow us up, and then suddenly I'm lost. I don't know where we are in the outline. The show gets derailed through no fault of yours. So we have made the decision. We're going to knock out all the super chats at the end of the show. That's how we're going to try to do it from here on out. So Brenna, if you would be so kind, let's start seeing some of these super chats. All right. From the first one, Big Juicy Germ. That's a good one. Afternoon, everyone. Anaheim having Cutter along with the New Jerseys looking oddly close to ours equals new rival, because I got that fire in me for it. I got to say, I think it's January 11th. They come here. We go to Anaheim during the Disney on Ice trip. I'm very much looking forward to these games. Yeah,
we have the Anaheim game in Anaheim. It's December 28th. It's a Saturday afternoon game, but it's in Anaheim. And then they come to Philly on the 11th of January. So that game is good. That game is going to be a well-attended one, I would guess.
Let's go to North California and boo a teenager.
I'm all for it.
So one thing I will say though, okay, all's fair here. If you want to boo the kid and you want to bring signs and express your dissatisfaction, that's all good. Can we please just not have a JD Drew thing again? I'd rather that not be hanging over our heads for the next decade.
No.
Who even has D batteries anymore?
Shitty. Nobody has batteries. Who has money for batteries in this?
I'm just saying the booing, the signs, the chants. That's all fair. All's fair is sports.
Fun, right?
But let's keep it fun.
Yeah.
Let's not have death threats. We talked about this during the Kevin Hayes Cutter, all that whole situation. Let's not threaten death. Let's just yell mean things at him. That's fine.
Yeah, just tell him that he sucks when he misses the net or something. That's as far as it needs to go. Yeah.
Yeah. While we're on the schedule before the next super chat, starting the season with 4 straight 10 o'clock games.
Didn't this happen last year?
Why the fuck do they do this to us?
I hate it.
Anyway.
I can't watch those games.
The next super chat, please, Brenna. All right. From Catholic Nano, Wild-Eyed Bill is the best Bill. I thought I was a lot more... I was a lot more wild.
When is Bill not? When is Bill not wild-eyed? It's base level.
When I look at myself with this camera angle, when we do the remotes a lot, I think I look stoned, so I try to make my eyes normal. And then I look in I was looking at myself. I was looking at myself in the mirror the other day. I was like, this is what an insane person looks like.
Yeah, then you just look like you jacked up on 3 Red Bulls before the show.
Usually. I'm we're staying at the Shore House this week, and I'm taking the dog out at midnight, and there's kids riding their bikes, going to parties and stuff, whatever it is they're doing. And I just turned a corner, and some people didn't see me coming. 2 drunk 19-year-olds almost fell off their bikes. It was me, hair all wild, mustache, just yelling at the dog to hurry up. And they're holy shit. So yeah, I get it. I look like an insane person. All right, Brenna, number 3. From Gary B. Always love hearing from Gary. Haha, love the Manscaped live read. I am an adult child. We all are. None of us work in sports to grow up. I'll tell you that.
Exactly.
I'm still waiting to feel like a grown-up. Any day now, I'm guessing.
I hear a couple other shows that really go all out with these Manscaped ones. I think I got to sit down and work on the copy for myself because it's not as funny as it could be, I'll tell you.
Kelly.
All right.
Get everybody fired.
All right. From Linden49, never thought Matvei Michkov would be in the NHL before. Who was RL? Stein?
I'm assuming that means Ryan Leonard, who was taken with the pick after Michkov.
Oh, Ryan Leonard.
Right.
Because I think people were tweeting about him today because he's at Capitals development camp. I'm a big Ryan Leonard fan, and if Matvei Michkov was not there at 7, I would have advocated for the Flyers to take Ryan Leonard. I think he's going to be a stud. I do not think he has the superstar level potential, though, that Matvei Michkov has. So Linden49, I didn't think that was going to be the case either. I assumed Leonard would make the jump maybe after 1 year, definitely after 2, and you're waiting on Michkov for 3. Instead, Flyers have Michkov after just 1 single year. Pretty cool stuff.
Not too shabby. And let's get to this next one from Gary B. again. Charlie, in your opinion, does it matter what month to make the road trip to Toronto? I'm planning on making a trip this season, March or January. I'm leaning towards March since my day is 2 days later.
Birthday, I'm guessing.
My birthday, okay.
Actually, this may be a better question for the Hinkle because, interestingly enough, and this is one of the things that does still very much annoy me. Hopefully, I can rectify this problem this season. I have never been to Toronto. It's one of the few
Charlie,
cities.
let's go to Toronto.
It's one of the few cities that I've never been to because, generally speaking, a lot of times when the Flyers play in Toronto, it's usually a one-off, and I don't usually go on the one-off trips. I usually go on the longer trips. And the couple times that I plan to go to Toronto, it's gotten postponed. Like, I've had to, bail on the trip for whatever reason. I think one was COVID-related. Another one was because I was planning to go to on a prospect trip last year where I was going to go up to Boston and interview Cutter, and then I was going to go to London and interview Barkey and Bonk, and instead I had to cancel the trip because a week before that they traded Cutter. So it seems like every time I'm trying to get to Toronto, it doesn't happen. So I really don't know. My guess would be March because it'll probably be less cold. But
less
Kelly,
wintry.
what's the suggestion on your part? Because you've been there multiple times.
Yeah, so I like going to Canada in the winter because there are no tourists and that rules. I mean, but you have to be cool with it being quite cold. So, there's that. But I mean, if your birthday is in March, go in March. The weather will be nicer. It's your birthday. You can stay outside a little bit more. It'll probably still be colder than here, but not too bad.
I gotta believe March is still winter in Toronto. Having no idea about weather or geography. Yeah. All right, and we have one more.
It was definitely still winter in Montreal when I was up there in March this past year, or this year, I guess.
Yes.
We have one more super chat just snuck in under the wire from Big Juicy Germ. Forgot my message. Flyers signed Anthony Richard. Yeah, I saw something about Tony Dick.
He's an AHL guy. He's an AHL guy. I mean, maybe he gets a call up and at some point if everybody gets hurt. But he's an AHL guy. He's on a 2-way contract. Good AHL scorer, but I really do not see him as being in the mix for an NHL job. Big Juicy Germ.
All right.
You got to have depth signings, fam.
Got to have depth signings.
Before we wrap it up for today, I got a couple of things to tell you about. First of all, the Michkov Mania shirt. You got to go to PHLYlocker.com right now. And I want to sell a bunch of these for a lot of reasons now. Not just because I want to outsell Charlie's Mad Russian design, but if you're on the old Twitter.com, I just want to piss some people off. So make sure you go to PHLYlocker.com, get your Michkov Mania shirt. And on Saturday, July 13th, it's the inaugural PHLY Liberty Open. That's right, Valley Brook Country Club in Blackwood. We are having a huge golf tournament. Starts at 2 p.m. It's brought to you by our friends at Shady Rays and TrueMark Financial Credit Union. It's going to be a great time, in part with the Big Drive Energy show that we have here at All City. I just can't say enough about the time we're going to have. Charlie is going to be there for 2 hours. Sure. After your round, you get the free beer. You're going to play, right, Chuck?
I am going to try.
Have you ever golfed before?
Oh, I mean, I'm going to play. I'm just going to attempt to golf.
Okay.
Yeah, I've golfed before, but I have not golfed all that often. So I'll be pretty bad.
So if you want to heckle Charlie on the golf course, just come on out July 13th. Make sure you go to allphly.com and sign up. Just click the events calendar. It'll be right there for you, July 13th in Blackwood at the Valley Brook Country Club. Come on out. It's going to be a really good time. All right, and that is all the time we have for you on PHLY Flyers today. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. If you haven't already, you got to hit that subscribe button. Follow us right here on YouTube. Never miss a live show. Set those reminders. We'll be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. once again with more news and notes from development camp and free agency talk, all the offseason stuff you've come to know and love. Follow us on Twitter at PHLY_Flyers and follow the podcast wherever you get those. Just search PHLY Flyers. All right. That's it. My name is Bill Matz. That's Charlie O'Connor. That's Kelly Hinkle. Until tomorrow, fam, stay loose and sexy, Philly.